Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Agency Side podcast. I'm here today with Brett Winn, who is a leader in the theatrical marketing world for many a year, running 8 successful AV departments, and now is the owner, CEO of Rave Collective. And I'm happy to have him here today. Thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited. This is always fun to talk about.
We're going to end our call with dueling guitars and see who can.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have to do a little Hotel California solo. What do you think?
Totally. Yeah. But yeah, man, I'm so happy to chat with you. I mean, obviously I've seen your work as well as, followed, a lot of your career. So I'm excited to speak with you. So I guess we'll just get right into it. How did you get into this wonderful world of creative advertising, entertainment marketing?
By accident, like most people.
Yeah.
I went to film school in Ithaca, New York, or at Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York. And I moved out right after graduation and desperately tried to find a job. I wanted to be a filmmaker and a director, but I found a job at FX Networks. They had just launched FX Networks. I think there's like 12 people in all of FX. And I got a job as a production assistant in the on-air promotions department. And at the time, I didn't know what an on-air promo was, but I was excited to work and excited for the job. And the greatest part about getting in at a network that was brand new like that is everybody had a voice in the room. So if we sat in a room and we were talking about what would make a great 30-second spot, there's only 8 people in the room, and I was one of them. And so everybody was given an opportunity to speak, and I used it as an opportunity to learn the craft and learn what went into it. And it actually really excited me. In fact, what excited me most was that was the path towards trailers at the time, right? For me, it was always about the movies and about trailers. And so promos were like mini trailers,
Yeah.
And that kind of lit the fire.
What did you study when you were at Ithaca? What was your major there?
Film and television.
Cool.
Yeah. I actually went to Ithaca College because on the tour, they said we could get our hands on the equipment day one. And I know that like NYU and some other schools, you were doing film theory for the first 2 years before you ever touched a piece of equipment. And I was always that guy. Like I just hands-on, even growing up, like in high school, I would use my dad's 8mm camera and then hook up 2 VCRs together with pause play forward to edit,
That's cool. And I'm sure it was beautiful out there in Ithaca too.
For 5 months out of the year, it was gorgeous.
Yeah. Then the other half was freezing.
The other half was freezing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you on a little secret. I'm actually I'm in Shelburne, Vermont, so it's a little outside of Burlington right now. So I know a thing or two about freezing my noogies off here for half the year. Februarys are bleak, but we lived in LA for a long time, so I had some solace from the brutal Northeast weather for a while. So now I've returned to it.
Yeah, I graduated and I was like, as soon as I came out to LA Pro, I was like, I'm probably never going to move back. And I think this coming July will be 30 years, which is dating me. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so your job at FX, you had already moved to LA when you picked up that job.
Yep. Yeah. I moved out in July. I think like July 4th weekend, I moved out. And I think I started FX in August, September-ish.
Cool. And what was your title? Were you like some production assistant?
Yeah. Production assistant.
Were you a bit of a gopher? Did you have to get copies and stuff before you got input?
In fact, probably too much of a gopher. I've just always been a hard worker. I feel like coming from the East Coast in New Jersey, where I grew up, was, just a work ethic. I was working since I was 13 years old under the table as a stock boy or whatever. And so I just always had this work ethic that was, if it needed to get done, I'm going to do it. And I remember some of the producers at FX were working on like an upfront reel or some giant sizzle reel for all the upcoming shows. And so they had an agency that they were working with, and the agency was in an online session to do all the color correcting and finishing. But they were at a nighttime session, and all the tapes that they needed were supposed to be delivered to the session. So they delivered everything to the finishing house. And then I got a call at like 9:00 at night saying, "Oh my God, we forgot one reel." And I said, "No problem." So I drove from my house in Burbank, Toluca Lake, all the way over to Fox Plaza in Century City, took the tape, drove it to the studio, drove back home, went back to bed, and then I got a call at 11:00 saying, "Oh my God, we forgot 2 more tapes." So I got in the car, I went back, did it again, came home, and then I got a call at 3:45 in the morning. And like, we need this 3 more tapes that we just didn't realize we needed, but we needed to finish. And I dragged myself out of bed and said, okay, drove over the hill again, got the tapes, took it to them, came back, went to sleep, and then still got to work by 9 a.m.
Wow.
And when I got into work, I remember my bosses going, we know what you did. We're very appreciative, but don't ever, ever, ever do that again. No one would ever ask you to drive somewhere through, 3:45 in the morning. We don't want you getting in an accident. And,
Yeah.
but I don't know
Heroic.
any other way to live. That's kind of been the way I operate. And still today, that's it. If something needs to get done, it's needs to get done.
I love it. Well, besides all of our other commonalities, having guitars, black frame glasses, we actually are both from New Jersey because I was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey, so that's where I grew up for a long time in Westfield, and then my parents relocated to Vermont, so I've got a little bit of that New Jersey hustle in me still.
You're in like the Bon Jovi area of Jersey, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in South Jersey in Cherry Hill, but yeah, Bon Jovi. Yeah, I was in a Bon Jovi cover band in high school, so
nice. That's cool. And are you still playing much music these days, or you kind of got a lot going on, I'm sure?
You know what? I have been, although this last year not so much, but about 5-6 years ago, it was before pandemic, I joined a band that called Aspen, and they've been around for like 20 years, and I'm friends with the lead singer songwriter, and he was like, oh, we talked about playing. He's like, are you playing? Do you want to be playing? I was like, oh my God, I'd love to be playing. He goes, well, my guitar player just backed out. Do you want to play with the band? And I was like, okay. He said, all right, learn these 6 songs, which are all originals, which is a lot harder to learn an original than it is a song you've heard on the radio for years. Yeah. And so I learned them. And then the next thing you know, we start playing the Canyon Club circuit. So we're opening for big bands for the better part of 4 or 5 years up until the pandemic. But we opened for Ambrosia, Berlin, the Motels, Dokken, Little River Band. Like, yeah, it was pretty wild. Like, and to go from playing in bars in college and the down and dirty to all of a sudden having a green room and like, it's kind of like a house of blues. So that on average, there are a couple hundred people there, and at best it was 1,500 people,
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's a cool gig. Did you have all the, did you get like nice in-ear monitors and great stage sounds?
No, I never did that. No. Yeah. But because we played at the Canyon Club so much, we knew the sound engineers. And so most of the time we got it dialed in, but it was fast. What about you? Are you out? Do you play?
I've tried to play a little bit more lately, but I actually I actually am too anxious of a person to really to do it well. I'm actually getting more anxious the older I get.
Why is that?
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. When I was young playing music, I felt more comfortable. And I think now when I get on stage, sometimes I just, I'm thinking about so many other things. I'm not really like in the moment. And I sort of have kind of just, I don't feel like I can really play my best. So I've really made music more of a private thing for a while, where I have a good friend here that we do some co-writing with. I don't know where my music journey is going to go anymore, but I still like doing it. I just don't know if I want to do it in front of other human beings.
Look, I mean, it's a different, we all get something out of it. Like, I still have a guitar right here that I pick up and play between Zoom calls all day, just because I love it. Just puts me in a happy place, puts me in a mindset. But it is interesting playing on stage, and I've played since I was in high school. And playing again, I realized that, if you're in the pocket, if you're in that zone with the band, I'll get on stage and we'll start playing, and I'll be very aware that we're playing. And then next thing you know, I blink and like the whole set's over and we're walking off stage. And this moment of like, I was so present that I don't even realize what happened,
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's, can't tell if it's like an awesome thing or like a scary thing that you like, moment in time passed and like, you have to like stop and think about it. Or my wife will show me videos or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that I did that. I forgot that this happened. But I also know, I don't know that I'm ever more present and in the moment than when I'm playing with the band.
Yeah. And that I've felt that experience before. I think for me now, I'm sort of getting that Zen feeling when I'm in a studio now. I think that's sort of, I'm more in my element there. And I just feel, not that everybody's eyes are on me. So that's interesting. But what I wanted to ask you though, I guess going back to your experience at FX, I guess maybe you can give me a little bit of some insights on where you went from a PA and being this gopher. What was sort of like what was your next step there?
So I worked my way up to be a coordinator, and then I saw a job posting at Fox Network, which was like the big brother to FX.
Yep.
And it was in their on-air promotions department, so I'm like, I know that. So it was actually for a post-production producer for the on-air promotion department. So it was the night shift. It was a graveyard shift. It was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And it was in the online conform bay. And basically, a post-production producer looks at all the promos, the last stop before they get shipped and uploaded to the networks and the affiliates. And so it's like you'd have to look at every single spot that came through and make sure that the tags matched. If there's an audio tag, that it matched the video tag.
Yep.
That the graphics were right. It was the last QC process. There was a ton of paperwork to fill out. So that was sort of a step up.
Yeah.
And then that led to getting into the audio side of finishing. So I started supervising mix sessions and directing voiceover talent for the promos. And really, after understanding how promos went together, I still had a passion to write and produce promos. Write and produce and eventually edit promos.
That's kind of an inspiring story, I think, for many people that are in the industry that I speak to today, because a lot of people are working those graveyard shifts and are doing the post-production, and they don't find it as creative, and they really are hoping to be able to eventually get to that creative stuff, which I think you're getting to.
Yeah, this is what I'm.
So you're getting to that inspiring story that a lot of people a lot of people I talk to every day are trying to get from the finishing coordinator to the creative coordinator, from post-production supervisor to producing. And if you really look at a lot of people's careers, sometimes people get really siloed in that one particular part, and they're not able to make that transition. So the fact that you were able to make that transition, get creative, and then also be able to be an agency owner, that's pretty cool. So maybe you can tell me how you got to the creative part.
This was the pivotal moment in my career, and I honestly have my wife to thank for it. She wasn't my wife at the time; she was my girlfriend. We just started dating, and I was always a creative guy, wanted to be a filmmaker, so I was always writing scripts. I was always shooting things. I wrote and directed a short film that I'd done on the side, and she's an actress, and so she was about to go on tour with a play through Canada at the Fringe Festival. And as she was leaving, she's like, your mind's all over the place. You're working at Fox, you're writing these scripts, you made a short film. What do you want to do? What's the one thing you want to do? And I was like, well, I don't know if there's one thing, but I really want to be a writer producer at Fox. I've been here all this time. I think at that point, it'd been 2 or 3 years. And she's like, well, can you just focus on doing that? She's like, I'm going to be gone for 2 months. You've got all the time in the world. What would you do if you could just do that? And I was like, oh, that's actually not a bad idea. So I went to one of the creative director producers and was like, hey, I really love to be writing and producing. What can I work on? Is there something I can work on? I'll stay late. I'll stay and sit with the editors. And I remember at the time, they would do the movie of the week packages on Fox, right? So for the summer, they would have movie of the week. And the creative director who's in charge of that at the time, that was her least favorite thing to do. She's like, I want to work on the series. I don't want to work on these dumb movie of the weeks. And I think the first one was Demolition Man, the Sylvester Stallone movie, which I was a huge Stallone fan because I grew up next to Philly. And I was like, I'll do it. I'd love to do it. And so I wrote some scripts. I ran it by her. She gave me some tweaks. And then we finally got to a place. She's like, okay, go sit in an edit bay and work with an editor and make these. And so what I would do is I get in at 10. At that point, I was in a normal shift. I do my audio room producing job from 10 to 6. And then get some dinner. And then at 6, I'd go sit down with the editors. And from 6 to usually midnight or 1 or 2, I'd work on the cut. And so I presented a 30-second spot to her to show in a meeting. And she showed it in the meeting. And everyone's like, great, approved, do the cut downs. And she got credit for it because no one knew that I was doing it behind the scenes. So she goes, oh, this is great. Can you do the cut downs? And we did the cut downs and that package went. And then on Friday, she said, wow, that was great. You want to do another one? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So then the next week I did it. So this went on for the whole summer. I think I ended up doing 9 or 10 of those packages. So 9, 10 weeks straight of 10 to 6, 6 to whenever,
Wow.
And at the end of it, I remember I had a reel of spots. I had a reel of stuff that I'd produced. And so I went into the VP. I made an appointment with the VP of on-air promo. And I said, hey, listen, I've been working on these spots. Here's the real stuff. How do I become a writer producer here? How do I make that shift? And I'll never forget. He looked at me, he said, I think you should find another job. I was like, Are you
Wow.
kidding me? Like I've killed myself all summer to do this. I didn't say this to him, but I'm thinking
Yeah.
I killed myself. And so I was like, all right, I guess. And so I started asking around of like, hey, can someone help me find a company to be a writer producer? And so I got some suggestions of boutique shops with at the time I was like, oh yeah, I guess there are outside agencies that do this. Not everything is in-house at the network. And went in on an interview at a company called Studio City, owned by Stu Weiss. And so I went in and I presented this reel of movie packages from the whole summer. And I just sat down not thinking anything. And so he said, oh, I saw your reel. It's really great. We'd really love you to work here. And he did the classic Hollywood thing, which I still can't believe I participated in this, but he literally wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it across the desk to me. And I remember looking at the number and thinking, okay. And I flipped it back over and I said, this is great. I really appreciate it. I have some things I need to work out. Is it okay if I get back to you tomorrow? And he
Wow.
said, yeah, I guess so. And so I left and I drove down Ventura Boulevard and I stopped right at the corner of Laurel Canyon and Ventura. And there was a gas station there with a payphone. This is going to date me as well. And I called my then girlfriend, Pam, who were just about to move in together. And I said, hey, remember that 3-bedroom townhouse in Studio City that you loved, but we couldn't afford? And she said, yeah. I said, tell them we'll take it because I just doubled my salary.
That's awesome. Well, why did the other guy say you should find a new job? Like, what do you think was the
You
thought
know,
behind that?
I think what happened was there was someone else who kind of came up the ranks before me and did a similar thing and ended up becoming a writer producer, and it didn't work out so well for whatever reason. He was afraid to take the chance again that it would reflect badly on him. Again, this is conjecture. I don't really know, but at the same time, like that was the best thing that ever happened to me in my career.
Yeah.
It sent me on this trajectory of I was at Studio City and had a lot of success as a writer, producer, editor. And from Studio City, I got recruited to go to Trailer Park. That was a trailer house, which is where I wanted to end up, to go and launch a broadcast division at Trailer Park because they didn't do on-air promos. So I launched into that. And during some downtime, Tim Nett, the owner, came to me and said, hey, listen, we've got a movie. Do you have some downtime? You want to cut a trailer? Actually, it was TV spots for a movie and then a trailer. But I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And I didn't understand that the trailer world was different than the broadcast world, because the broadcast world, whatever you cut was going to finish eventually, you know.
Yeah.
And the trailer world, I didn't realize, oh, there's multiple agencies on it. You could cut a bunch of spots and none of them ever see the light of day, or they go through rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of revisions.
Yeah.
And so the first couple spots I cut finished at like version 1 or with a minor tweak. And everyone's like, this is crazy. Who's this guy cutting version 1s that are finishing? And I didn't know any different because the broadcast world, that wasn't that abnormal for you to cut a spot, especially if they needed it to air that night. Like there was no time for revisions.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then I ended up cutting a trailer for a movie called The Hot Chick with Rob Schneider. And that finished, and that kind of set me on the trajectory of Trailer Park. In fact, they're like, we don't want you to do broadcasts anymore, just do trailers.
Oh.
Which was exciting for me because that was my dream job anyway.
Yeah. That, sounds like, yeah, FX did really do you a favor on that. It seems like the gold really was getting that portfolio of that work on your
Yeah, there's no other way to do it, right?
uh,
If you're passionate about it, and whether it is you've got some innate skill or ability, or it's the 10,000 hour rule of just doing it enough to get good at it. But
yep.
I think that's it. That's the hard part. Is in a creative industry, you can work super hard at it and be okay, and you could work no time at all, but have a gift of whatever, and it pops.
Yeah.
And I don't, I do believe anybody can do it if you want it badly enough, but it may take you more or less effort than someone else.
Totally. Yeah. I try to, when I'm mentoring people that are coming up in this industry, to really put a lot of emphasis on their portfolios and make sure that they're like up to date and they have all their, that it's just that it really pops, because that is really where the gold is. In this industry, no one's going to really look at your resume. I mean, if you're a copywriter, they'll look at your packet or something, but they're not going to look at your, like, they're not going to be like, well, you went to Hofstra between 92 and, like, nobody cares. Like, they want to say, give me the password and let me in there and see what you've been doing. And I want to know exactly what your creative input was on each of these projects. What was, what were your specific contributions,
Yeah.
And they want an honest they want an honest report of that. They don't want, clients don't want 3 or 4 candidates claiming the same artistic contribution.
Well, it's hard because a lot of times, yes, there's a lot of emphasis on the editor in our business, but a really great creative director can take a good editor and make them great. And yet a really great editor can take a decent creative director and make him or her look great too. It's a balance, and it's really hard to tell. I do think that a lot of times 2 brains are better than one. And so if you've got the right producer, editor, creative director, editor together bouncing ideas that just gel, then greatness can happen. But I don't know. It's not always the case. And I've seen this because I've hired people who are like, wow, that was really great. And then they come over and they do good work. But I'm like, wow, I think that it was the relationship you had with your producer, creative director that got you to that level. And splitting up the dynamic duo doesn't always work.
You can't get Lennon and McCartney away from each other. It's just not the same, right? Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah. There's that magic that happens of bouncing ideas, because I think being in a dark room and speaking as an editor, if I'm just by myself, there's a limit, right? To I'm going to push myself to be great, but at some point in time, I've memorized the sequence. And this is something that it's interesting as an editor that happens is once you've made all the edits and you know what it looks like, you know how it flows to you, it makes perfect sense. And it's not till someone else comes in and looks at it with fresh eyes, or I don't know if you had this, if you're editing, you have someone come in behind you and just watch it over your shoulder. You see it with fresh eyes because you're trying to interpret what they're thinking, not just what you've done till now. And I think that such a crucial part in the editing process to have someone else get eyeballs on it and say, oh, that doesn't really work for me. And you're like, oh, why? And part of it is it works for you because you've seen it 100 times.
Yeah. I don't have the technical chops for editorial or producing editorial. I mean, I watch it all the time, seeing other people's work, and I have an idea of what makes it good and what makes it not as good. But I can really relate to you in terms of like my experience in music. When you are, when you're in a studio recording a song and, you've heard it the way you've heard it in your head a lot and it makes sense to you. But then somebody's like, well, this could be a lot better, and you want to know why. And then once they give the input, you realize, wow, yeah, that is better than what I was doing because I've just written the same song again that I already wrote before. And now this is different. So yeah, I totally understand that sometimes having 2 brains, that's
but it's also, it comes with being able to delineate for yourself, like when someone coming in is making it different to make it different, and when someone's coming in to make it different to make it better. And that's something only you can really decide, or the client.
True.
Yes, but
yeah, that is true.
If you to stand your ground, like that's the other part about it. Just because someone comes in and makes a suggestion doesn't mean you have to take it. And I think that that's that balance, and a good group, good pair that's working together will understand if you push back and say, this is why I did that and this is why I believe in it, that they should have enough to say, okay, let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, imagine it's like personalities, I'm sure, are pretty are important in the business, because if you're partnered with somebody, they have to you got to have an understanding with each other, I imagine. Are there any people that you've enjoyed collaborating with over the years in particular that you've had sort of that like cosmic experience with, the John and Paul?
Yes. In fact, it's an editor. His name is Rob Nelson, although he goes by Rob Benjamin now. And so Rob came to work with us. He was working on UFC, cutting UFC promos in Vegas, and we got connected, and he ended up moving to LA to come work for me at Refinery. And he just always had this magic sauce that I'm like, wow, dude, he's just got he's a filmmaker at heart. He's a filmmaker, period. But just comes to the table with great ideas. And so to be able to sit down and say, hey, what if we did this, or what if we do that? And then you kind of leave him alone and you come back and like this magic would happen. And I think the trailer that we worked on together for Kong, there's a trailer for Kong Skull Island that, when the magic happens, and it was obviously a lot Rob, but it also was the whole team coming in and getting excited by what Rob was doing. And our music supervisor came in, and I'll never forget, we cut it to a Rascals song, We Got to Get Out of This Place.
Nice.
And then we went to this big orchestral build for the back end, and the client was like, I love it, but I want the whole trailer to be that one song. And so we're trying to figure out how to crack that puzzle because the song just didn't build. And so we had this idea, what if we slowed down that progression halftime and had a big orchestra do it and have a choir come in and chant the lyrics versus, and so we built out this massive
Nice.
choir and we got to record it and come in and it finished. And so just to be able to sit and look at like, that's where when people are fired up and they're in the zone and the magic happens, it's awesome. You look back in time like, man, I don't know how we could ever recreate that if we tried.
Yeah, I mean, how do you recreate that? How do you create that? How did you get those people all together with that vision? Like putting the orchestra together, like what goes into that?
Well, that was, Rob and myself and Joe Pistorizi, who's our music supervisor, sat in a room and we're trying to figure it out. And I think I was like, well, if we took that progression and just went ba bum ba bum, but did it at that pace, and then we're like, and then I don't know if Rob or Joe's like, then we can have them sing, "We gotta get out of this place," like, and it all
Yeah.
started. By the way, we're all musicians. Rob's a musician, Joe's a musician, so I don't know that would have happened with just any group.
Yeah. Did you have to find specific musicians for this project?
I think we have a lot of music production companies that we work with.
Mm.
And so I think Joe just reached out to someone he trusted and said, here's the big idea. And then they went and put it together and then got the orchestra in to do it and the choir. And yeah, it was super fun.
That's pretty cool. It must be pretty amazing when you've had this idea and then you first get that track back and you're playing it and you're like, wow,
Oh my God.
that's what I've heard in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
And it's, there's a trailerization side of the business that we do a lot, but that in particular was for me as a musician too, to be like, oh yeah, we sat in a room and kind of wrote that or reimagined what it could be. And it wasn't a trailerization. It was like a completely different song, even though it was built on the same idea.
Yeah. That's cool. There must be some advantage to being a musician and having sort of like that rhythmic connection to, everything. I mean, even you don't cut, right? You're not an editor yourself, but I'm sure you advise. Oh, you do edit. You do. Okay.
You edit. That was the major part of my career. In fact, it was the harder transition was for me to get out of the seat and to work with other editors, right? Is to like sit down and be like, oh, have an idea, do this. And then they start cutting. You're like, no, move over. And then you like, jump in. And I know I upset a lot of my editors when I was first starting, when we first launched the business, and I was still cutting a lot.
Wow.
And then
So
over time, you start to use your voice versus your hands, and start to use your words to describe to people what you're looking for. But yeah, I mean, I definitely usually inquire when we hire editors if they have some sort of musical background, because cutting music is half the battle.
yeah.
If you can't really, if someone comes in without any musical knowledge, then yeah, you might be cutting it to a beat, but you're cutting the wrong beat. It's like,
Yeah.
It was interesting when you watch people do it. You're like, yes, it's on a beat. It's not on the beat. It's on a beat,
Totally. Well, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your new venture or continuation of a previous venture in a different capacity. What's that all about?
Yeah, after 16 years, and I love my partners. We've had a wonderful experience. In fact, they're still my best friends. Adam and I are way into cars and go driving almost, most Sunday mornings. We've got a lot of same passions. We've traveled together. In fact, we just went to Fiji with his now wife. It was his fiance at the time, and my wife. We went to Fiji last year together. And but we got to a point in time where the company has grown so much that some of the clarity and focus in what we were doing was getting lost along the way. And now that we had leadership teams below us, when it was just the partners working together and we were at the helm of all the campaigns, it was easy because if we crossed streams or I went to a client that they were working on, we all kind of knew it and we were cool about it. But as you start to have leadership teams and there's more people going after the work, some of the lines were getting crossed and it was getting a little muddy. And we reached a point in the company's life where it made more sense for me to branch off doing the AV side and for them to branch off doing the print side. And so they kept the name Refinery. And so now if you want posters or billboards or digital, you go to Refinery. And if you want AV centric materials, you go to Rave. So we basically just changed the name. The entire staff, the entire crew is the same, but it also opened me up to bringing on some fresh perspective to the business. And so ironically, not with any kind of intention, but just because of timing, I ended up connecting with Ben Andron, who ran Bond AV for the last 9 years. And he had parted ways with Bond, and we sat down to have lunch to talk about the industry. And started talking about the way we ran our teams and the way we ran our jobs and the clients that we had, and realized like, oh, wait a second, what if we did this thing together,
Yeah.
And it took a few months to kind of figure it out, but I'm excited to say he came over to partner with me at Rave and brings a similar perspective. We sat down and we were talking about like, oh, what's at the heart of who we are and what we do? What is that statement? What's our mission statement? And he had said, he's like, I pitched this thing to Bond, but they didn't really go for it. And I'm like, well, what is it? And he said, good people doing great work together. And I was like, oh my God, dude, that's who we are. That's who Refinery, who Rave is today. That's what we're all about. And so we adopted it right away. He came on, which is great. Rob Benjamin, who had worked with me and did that Kong trailer and left, he came back. We have another guy, Phil DeCord, who cut the original Matrix trailer. He was at a company called Geronimo, so he's with us now. And then Jim Pasco, who kind of headed up our creative content division, but there's some blurry lines between what fell on the print side and what fell on the AV side. And now he's partnered to kind of take that to a whole new level and branch off with the creative content, digital, social experience, that component to what we do on the AV side, and really expand it and grow it. So it's one of those things, nothing changes if nothing changes. And so I think I just changed everything. And
That's great though, man. It's nice to shake things up. I feel the same way. I'm always excited to try new tools and new things and bring new people into the world, or new people into our company. Yeah, it does. It can spark new things and take you to new places. So I'm excited to see the work that you guys start putting out. It's exciting.
Yeah, me too. It's fun to see the perspective shift, and hopefully a new fire, kind of got ignited. And it's so crazy how it happens. And it's not even intentional, but I think someone gets excited about something and then someone else gets excited about the same thing. And all of a sudden now, like we went to the Clio Awards last night, and I always think of it like a high school reunion, because it's like we get to see everybody, all our friends in the industry. But it was amazing how many people had already heard about the change and came up and congratulated us, and were excited to hear more. And it was awesome to feel, I don't know, so much excitement in the industry around us by our peers. It's really a wild experience. I hope everybody feels that at some point in their career. It's not every day that happens, but I'm going to hold on to it as long as we can.
Yeah. As much of, as hard as this particular industry is in creative agency world, I do find that of course I'm in a different place in it than you are, as I do handle more of like the hiring and recruitment and all that stuff. But I will say that when I went out on my own and tried something new, like the first day that I launched, like, I mean, I had like 1,000 LinkedIn likes and messages.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God, really?
congratulations, and can't wait to work with you, and I'm so excited. It does mean a lot, because I remember like that was such a leap for me. I was so like vulnerable and so like, man, you're looking to get clients and you're just wondering if you're just like going to be like, hello, hello, hello. You're like hoping to get some response. And when you get that response, you're like, wow, this is, it is inspiring. So I'm glad that you guys are getting that, a warm reception, because,
and
that's
it's hard.
cool.
Hard as entrepreneurs, it's can be lonely, because not too many people understand the trials and tribulations that go along with it, unless you sitting or have sat in the seat before,
Yeah. And if you're working in this particular space too, you've really been, you've been slapped in the face a number of times, especially in the last couple of years with the consolidation and between, the budgets getting smaller and, the strikes and the global pandemic. I mean, there's just been so much. I mean, I'm not saying that every industry hasn't been affected, because the whole world has been affected, but this particular space, I think it's been so much friction.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm just now starting to see a little bit of an uptick. Like we thought maybe the floodgates would open and all of a sudden we'd be swamped again. But I am starting to see, I think we've gotten over the hump. I feel like everyone was ready to go back into production. And then IATSE threatened to strike, right? The crew union threatened to strike. And I think everybody was just like, time out, we're just going to hold again. And we found ourselves in the middle of the summer struggling, like really struggling.
Yeah.
And so it's starting to feel like, once they said, okay, now things are starting to go to production, and then being, on the creative advertising side, it's like, especially on the AV side, like my print partners would get in early because they're like, okay, it's back on, let's do photo shoots. But a lot of our work doesn't happen until they have footage.
Yeah.
And so, now it's starting to feel like, okay, the footage is starting to come in.
That's good to hear. I mean, I'm optimistic about the new year. I mean, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but I feel like I'm getting that same sort of vibe from a lot of owners that things are starting to feel a little bit more normal. But I still think there are some smaller shops that are still really struggling and just trying to keep the lights on. So it's a mix. Yeah, I mean, this is a business that I don't think it's like, even during the like the Great Depression, people would still go to see theater. It's like people need this in their lives. And so although it's like changing and the landscape is changing and there's so many things coming at us from AI to just all these crazy things, I think it's this space, like I said, it's a need, and the scale will level out at some point.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I have a lot of entrepreneurial friends, and I'm in an organization called EO, which is an entrepreneurs organization, and it's made up of business owners in all walks of life. In fact, very few of them are in our walk of life, but you tend to find that we all go through the same struggles, right? As if you're owning a business, it's like, okay, how do I make payroll? How do I market ourselves? How do we hire and fire people? How do we, take care of leases? And but it's been super helpful in navigating because everybody's gone through the rise and fall over time, and being in an arena with people who can share experiences is so incredibly helpful and helps us learn and grow as entrepreneurs and learn and grow as people. And it's been helpful. I really don't know where I was going with that because you started down a path and I just engine and I didn't mean to.
I almost don't know where I'm going every time I say something, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just praying that the words are going to come to me and I'm going to get through the sentence. There's no judgment if you lose your train of thought on the Agency Side podcast, because I am the king of losing his thought over here. But I did have a thought that I was on my mind that I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up our call, is that I read that you are a car enthusiast, so I am just curious on what that is all about, and what kind of cars you are enthusiastic about.
I discovered that I am a huge Porsche fan. I am a Porsche-phile, I think. And this is going to sound crazy. I'm 51 years old, and I think I've owned 53 cars in my lifetime so far.
Wow.
A lot of, yeah. In fact, my wife, we cooled off a little. The last car that I had was a Porsche GT3. It was a 2014 Porsche GT3, which was actually my dream car and like the pinnacle for me of like, yes, I've driven Lamborghinis and Ferraris and everything, but the Porsche GT3 is to me like the best, easiest car to drive, whether it's in the canyons or on a track, and I've done both. And then the last year and a half was really a struggle, with work and stuff, and so we downsized a little bit, and it was interesting, to have my kids go, "Daddy, why are you selling the Porsche?" And it's like, well, because it's time, and there's nothing we have now that we can't get again. But yeah, and then just like I have a problem which I'm getting better, almost like the guitar collection thing of, I'll see a great deal on a Porsche, and I think I saw an older one, and for some reason, as I've gotten older now, like the cars that everyone hates or the models that everyone hates, I'm slowly being attracted to.
Nice.
But in 911, if you know anything about 911s, the 1999 to 2004 was called the 996 model. And it's when they went from air-cooled to water-cooled, and the shape changed, and they got kind of straight as opposed to so curvy. And it's one of the most hated 911s that there is, if anyone hates 911s. And so I saw one in Vegas, and the price was right, and he had kind of GT3-ized it, so sitting on better wheels and tires and had a wing and better suspension, done all the work that I would have done. And I threw out like a lowball offer on eBay, not thinking about it, and he accepted the offer, and I was like, crap, I really don't want to do this right now. I then had to go, I called him and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to give you your deposit money, but I really shouldn't buy the car. And he was cool and it was good. But then I had to tell my wife that like, hey, I need to tell you the truth about something. We almost just ended up with another 911, but I stopped the deal. And she's like, what are you doing? And I was like,
That's so funny. So you lost them. You were an honor. That's honorable of you to eat the deposit, though, or right?
well, I've eBayed, for a long, long time. And I've always been like, if you bought something from me, it's a commitment. And I
Yeah, I respect
believe
that.
in upholding the commitment. And
I didn't.
so,
I didn't even know you could buy cars on
oh
eBay.
my gosh.
I
Yeah,
didn't
it's
even
a
know that
little
was a
thing.
thing.
Oh
That's
my
pretty.
God. Any car all over. And then my problem is, because I've had so many and we've had a 996 before. I know the ins and outs. I know what it would sell for. I know if we bought the car, I could probably bring it here, dial it in, have some fun with it for a while and flip it and either get all our money back or more.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's been battling the addiction of like, why do you need that right now? And what I realized, and this is going to sound crazier, is we've got an old Porsche that's been in the shop since April. And again, it's a 924, and I don't know if you know anything about 924s. Most people know 944s, which is like 16 candles Porsche. But the 924 I bought about a year and a half ago, and it was the car identical to the one I took to my senior prom. So it was my aunt's car. She had lent it to me, and I found one identical to it and bought it, and then got this harebrained idea to turn it into the race version of the car, which is called the Carrera GT, which had fender flares and a different nose and a scoop and the whole thing. And so bought all the pieces, got everything together, and it's been in the body shop. And because they gave me a deal to do all the body work, they are not on a rush to get it done. It's been sitting there. It's all, I think today, I called yesterday and it was ready for paint. Which hopefully in the next couple of weeks we get it back, and then I can cool my jets on car looking. We've had it all. We've had it from BMWs and Porsches to Camaros and Trans Ams and Mustangs, and we had a Shelby GT350, and I had a Lotus Elise, and we've had motorcycles. I'm just a driver. Like, if you
Yeah.
set me up on the weekend, it was always cars and guitars. And the funny thing is, I went back and looked I had a yearbook picture from high school, and it's me sitting on the hood of my 86 Firebird with an Ovation guitar. And I'm like, all these years later, nothing's changed.
The same guy. That's funny. I wasn't a car guy, but my father-in-law is a huge car guy. And I needed to become a car guy to learn the language, and they're big Formula One people. So they're, always watching the races there. And my father-in-law is very into like, the European cars and also
Right.
like vintage stuff. Like he actually fixes them, like Alfa Romeos
Oh,
and
wow.
like Ferraris. So he does all these like, he fixes the cars that nobody else can in this area, which is pretty cool. So he got me kind of into those things. And I drove a real crap car I've always driven crap cars, but since being in this family, I finally bought like a really nice, fairly new BMW. Like it makes a huge difference. It's like it's like it's electric, and so it's a hybrid, I guess. So a plug-in electric. The I can't remember the number offhand. I'm not showing my car guy swagger here, but it's a nice, it's a luxurious. It's the kind of car where when you drive it, people are like, "Wow, that's a pretty nice car you got there." I go through the car wash and I get the cheapest one, and the guy's like, "You sure you don't want to spend 20 on this one? That's a nice car." And I'm just like, "Dude, I just want the cheapest one." So yeah, but
I'd love to see your father-in-law's shop sometime. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, Pierre's Repairs. He's the man. He knows everything about he takes care of us too and our car issues and stuff, and helps us with our tires and everything. So I'm an aspiring car enthusiast. I'm getting there. But
Any Sunday morning you feel like witnessing firsthand the car community, I'll take you through a drive in the canyons. We always end up in Malibu, and it's that's the beautiful thing about Los Angeles. The car culture here is incredible. And usually I've built up a good group of friends. So when we go out, there's always some crazy cars that go with us. But, you park anywhere, and next thing you know, you're having conversations with people about, their cars and their experiences. And, it's always funny. It's like people are just dying for things that we have in common. Like the second we get on, it's like, we're going to talk guitars and
totally.
and I think that's the thing I like about music in general and cars is that, you can walk in a room, I would say 95% of the time, if you talk about cars or guitars, you got them.
Yeah.
in education.
It's an icebreaker. That's cool, man. Well, thanks so much, Brett, for being on and chatting with me. I appreciate your time. Really wonderful conversation, and I wish you all the best of luck in the new rebrand endeavor. And I look forward to looking at all the stuff you guys put out.
Thank you, thank you. And we didn't even really tap into the AI stuff. That's like a whole other podcast conversation to get into, because
Well,
that's where I was going before. Is that I had a conversation with one of my entrepreneurial friends like 4 years ago or 3 years ago. He goes, "Dude, the AI thing's coming. You should get on board and you should be a thought leader." And I was like, I don't want to be the guy that single-handedly crushes our industry. And now I've come around on the other side of really wanting to get involved with how we can use AI as a tool for what we do specifically. And I'm trying to make connections with the right people to be part of the think tank, because I'm coming to it from a positive place. I don't want it to eliminate people's jobs. I want it to make our jobs easier.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I actually got I have a client that sent me a job description. Maybe I can tell you how bizarre this one is when we're talking about AI. This person asked me for an AI artist, someone who can take a set of storyboard images, 20, 30 grayscale comic book-ish illustrations, convert them into something approaching photoreal still images with Gen AI. We need persistence of character and environment as boarded within scenes. Ideally, we want a stable diffusion guy who also knows comfy UI. Some of these other platforms may or may not work with this. DALL-E, Adobe Firefly, NVIDIA Canvas, Art. I mean, I don't even know what the hell this is.
Yeah, no, that OpenAI has a lot. I mean, Midjourney can probably do it. I think DALL-E could definitely do it. I
Yeah,
think really what we're finding, and this is what's so funny, is like AI can't do anything without human interaction.
totally.
And so really, if you look at it as a tool of like, oh, there's a tool that can do crazy things, but I still have to be able to navigate that tool to get what I want or what a client wants. And I think that that's the part about AI of like, yes, I can have it create an image. You're like, oh my God, that's amazing. I can never draw that. I'm like, okay, but can you get it to do exactly what you want, exactly the way you want it? And again, you're talking about a sculptor. It's like, can you chisel a piece of marble? Can you use clay to create, and
Yep.
the people who master it, it's not everybody. And I think it's the same thing with AI of like yes, it's an amazing creative tool and it can do awesome things. And to the layman, yeah, you could go in and you could probably make something and I'd be like, wow, that's pretty cool. If I'm not an artist or if I'm not a photographer or if I'm not an illustrator, then I'd be like, shit, I couldn't do that. That's amazing. Oh, AI did that for you. But then there's another degree to that where the illustrator goes in and says, okay, how do I take something I've done and make it better? Or how do I navigate it in my own style?
Exactly. Yeah, that prompt engineering, being the one with the vision to operate the AI, I think that definitely gives me some peace of mind that we won't all be synthesized into.
Well, and the funny thing is, it's like we look at animation today, right? That's all CG animation, right? If it's computer generated imagery, CGI, it's like that's been around for decades. And now you're able to do it using typing prompts versus commands on a keyboard or a pen and really, if you start to look at it that way, like it's not far off from what we're doing. It's just way more powerful.
Totally.
You
Yeah,
know?
that is true. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting ride. And we'll definitely have to get you on. We'll do a Brett Winn part 2, the
Yes.
AI analysis. So
Well,
maybe,
hopefully by then I'm diving in. I'm not allowed to say I've gotten access to some new AI software that two of my people and I got on like as an alpha tester. It's not even a beta tester, it's an alpha tester. And so once we kind of have a good gauge on that, I can share experiences, and it's
yeah,
fun, man. I mean, I think you know, at first you're like, this is incredible. And then you start to go, okay, it's incredible, but how would I really use it? Like, what's the tool for, and how would I navigate it? What would I need to do to get it to a place where I could offer my services because I've mastered that tool?
yep. That totally makes sense. Well, if you test it and you do like it, let
Yeah.
me know, because I'm desperately looking for sponsors for this podcast. So maybe I can hit up this AI company and get them
Well, you know
to
what?
jump in my.
A buddy of mine, Chad Nelson, who's working for this particular part in OpenAI, is an AI expert and has been playing around with it and is the thought leader. He's my connection to getting on this platform. If I'm happy to share his information with you, and if he has time and would do a podcast, I think it'd be really fascinating.
I would
to get
love that. I really would, sincerely. Would love that contact information and follow through that.
Yeah, just email me after this and then I'll share it.
Cool, Brett. Well, thanks so much for being on, man. And I will look forward to our next conversation.
Love it.
All right,
Thanks
man.
for having me.
Cheers. Be well.